Hello everybody and welcome to Rest and Reason. I'm RP the Red Panda and today we're going to be doing another Games Fixed video for Everdell. Now, I want to say right off the bat that Everdell is one of my favorite games of all time. So this is not a knock on Everdell. In fact, Everdell is already a gold recliner before any of my fixes. I would already say that everybody should own Everdell. But even the best of games will sometimes have something that needs to be fixed, something that could have been just a little bit better. And this is a great example of that. I had a commenter who pointed out that Everdell suffers from the single deck issue. And I'm going to put that comment right here so I can give credit to this person because they really hit on something. It really made me think about Everdell. Everdell's feel is really exactly what its art tells you. Its art perfectly shows that this game is both beautiful, inviting, and wonderful to play, but also you can tell right away by looking at this card that it's also crunchy. I would liken it to journeying into the woods and you're just enjoying every part of it, but at the same time, you're thinking, and you're thinking. The main mechanic of Everdell is worker placement, and worker placement is just a wonderful little mechanic, and I explain it right here in this video for Viticulture. So go ahead over to there and find out about that. Let's go ahead and get into what I think is the main problem with this game. The main original problem is that its masterability and its synergy is not as high as it could be because some of these elements just didn't quite work as well with the game as they could have. Namely, the deck system, the fact that you had one giant deck instead of divided decks. And the second problem were these bonuses, which often felt like a separate part of the game. So let's go ahead and go through how I fixed these problems to help raise the masterability and the synergy of this game. My first fix was dividing the deck into 4 different decks. A deck for unique critters, a deck for unique constructions, a deck for common critters, and a deck for common constructions. This made it so that the 4 main groups have their own decks. And I will explain now how I think that this helps fix the masterability and synergy. So for masterability, I think that this makes it so much more masterable because with that giant deck, the likelihood that you could filter through that deck using the draw cards to get through to the thing that you actually needed was very difficult. Most of the cards in this deck have only 2 or 3 copies in the entire deck, and when it was a really big deck, way bigger than this, it was very difficult for you to actually go through enough of that deck to find the card that you might really need to make your strategy sing. But this adds the extra element that now you have only a quarter of the deck size. This is literally 1/4 of the original deck. And that means that if you need a common critter or a common construction or a unique critter or a unique construction, you can go into that specific deck or you can take from that specific part of the meadow, those 2 specific cards in the meadow that will always be that type, and you can filter through to get to the one that you need, and it will be a lot easier and you'll pretty much always be able to do it. Now, of course, that will take resources and time, but you can actually make that choice if you want to, unlike in the original game, where really making that choice was never a good idea because it was a crapshoot. It was very unlikely you would find the card you needed. Now, it's way easier to find the cards that you need on the masterability side of things. On the synergy side of things, this makes these cards work together a little bit better, specifically at the beginning of the game. The common critters and common constructions are most of the producing ones, the ones with this little green symbol. And those producers are essential to getting the game up and running. This makes it, because they both have their own section, more likely that you're going to get producers early in the game than in the original game, where you'd often get these unique constructions and unique critters that weren't producing anything for you. And that just didn't quite synergize with how the game wants you to focus on production at the beginning and focus on the bigger stuff at the end, because you'd end up with a field, a meadow full of unique critters and unique constructions that you need at the end of the game, but nobody can get a production card. This makes it so that if you need a production card, there's a pretty high chance that it's in one of the 2 decks for the commons or on the meadow part for the commons. And that just makes it all sing just a little bit better. So let's go ahead and get into my second change. Let's start with the bottom bonuses. So with the bottom bonuses, originally you just need anything with the proper symbol. So in this case, it's this little baggy symbol to get this one. You need 3 of those bag symbols to get this. But you also had to place a worker on it. That's what this paw print means. The problem with this is workers are incredibly valuable and incredibly rare as resources go in Everdell. So I've made a change where instead of having to use a worker to get this, you will get it as soon as you get 3 of these symbols. But that sounds too easy. So I actually made it so that you need 3 of these symbols, and you specifically need them for critters. You need critters with this symbol, and as soon as you have 3 critters of that symbol, you can immediately grab this and get the benefits. That is important to point out because you cannot use constructions. You can't use buildings such as this one. You can't use that construction even though it's that symbol. So it makes it both harder to get that on one level, but easier to get it on another level. And it makes it so that almost everybody can have a reasonable chance of getting those and of blocking each other from getting those. So it's going to make for a real strategic thing. Then you have these ones on the top. Now, I found that for the top ones, the major issue seemed to be that they often weren't worth it compared to other stuff at the end of the game when you actually could do them. So I did the same thing I did for the bottom, where you no longer have to place a worker. You just ignore this, you don't place the worker, and as soon as you get the Monastery and the Wanderer, those 2 cards that you need, you will immediately get this. So let's go ahead and go into why this changes this for the better. This takes this area around the Evertree and makes it an actual part of the game. This was one of the biggest problems for synergy in the original game. Because in the original game, I found most people just completely ignored these top ones. It just wasn't often worth it to have to send one of your most valuable resources, your workers, up here to get that, compared to having them do almost anything else on the board. And then for the bottom ones, they were sometimes worth it because they were higher victory points and they were guaranteed victory points. But even then, they were only really worth it at the beginning of the game when you didn't need the workers quite as much for other stuff. This makes it so that now, these are always something you can get. All you have to do is fulfill the requirements and you immediately get them. Now, some people will respond, that seems like it would make it less strategic, because one of the big things for these that makes them strategically difficult to get is having to use a worker to get them. And in response, I would say, yes, it does take away the worker element of how difficult it is to get these. But it doesn't take away the strategy, because it adds a new strategy. You see, because all you need to do is get those 2 cards for these, and the 3 critters or 4 critters for these, it means that now people are going to have to be watching each other. They're going to have to be going, does that person need that to get this? Should I stop them? Should I not take the time to stop them because taking the time would actually be worse for me? And it adds a whole new level of strategy. It also means that if you have the chance to get one of these, you probably should take it as quick as you can, but sometimes that might mean your city's getting something you don't really need, but you want it because you're going to get this bonus right away. You want that combo. So it adds an extra level of strategy, because not only for you do you have to decide, do I want to get this immediately, this immediate bonus, but maybe at expense of what happens in my city. And also, you have to decide, do I want to block somebody else from getting what they need to get these bonuses? And that, again, might hurt what you're doing in your city. So this makes this feel like an actual part of the game. So let's go ahead and get into what are the scores for Everdell. Well, the original score for Everdell is a 4.1 out of 5, and that is a gold recliner. So this game's already a game that I would say go out and buy it. Just do it, dang it. The game is gorgeous. The mechanics sing. It's the perfect level where it's right on that edge of beginner and medium intermediate player. It's just such a good game, and it's going to be perfect for those people coming out of that first level of board gaming. I would argue people coming from Catan and Ticket to Ride. This is the next step to give them, and it's so warm, it's so inviting. You have so many pieces that are tactile. And even though I got the big box version, what I showed you today is almost entirely the base version. The only thing here that is unique to this version is this is a wooden tree instead of a cardboard tree, and these have stickers on them. Everything else you are getting in the original game, and it looks just like this. And this is my 5 out of 5 for art. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous game. I can't emphasize how much and how wonderful every piece of art in this game is on almost every card except for a few of these ones which are a little drab, which is a small complaint when you're getting this much art for so good of a cost. Now, my fixed score is a 4.37, or a 4.38. It was actually right in between those two. And that gives it a gold recliner again. Obviously, this doesn't lower the game. But when it comes to a game that's already a 4.1, going up 0.27 points might not sound like very much, but it is. That's a big change for a game that's already almost perfect. And so I would continue to encourage people, think about your favorite game. Think about that one thing in that favorite game that seems to drive everybody in your group nuts, and go, could we just make that different for our group? And if you can, just do it. The only caution I would give is to new players, make sure you teach them the original rules the first time, or you say, this is our house rule. So that if they do go to a convention and you taught them how to play, they won't think, oh, this is the absolute rules and everybody else in the world is wrong playing this. And then they'll feel stupid when somebody takes out the manual and says, this is the actual rule. Aside from that, though, make games better for your group. That's what this channel is all about. Trying to help other groups make games better for everybody. And if I'm failing, let me know down in the comments. If I'm succeeding, let me know that it worked for you and why it worked for you. And if it's in the middle, tell me both. Tell me where it succeeded and where it failed. That's what I want, is this to be a conversation. And also, please hit that subscribe button, that notification button, that bell button, everything. Just hit all the buttons so that you can tell us that you are appreciating this content. And please go over to our Patreon page and support this channel so that we can continue doing this thing that we love and having these conversations with you. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today on Rest and Reason.